right, it's loading. All right, good evening, everybody. This is Mikhail here from Quarantine, Oakland, at beautiful Katie Ryman's house. I'm wishing y'all health. I'm hoping that everyone is not only healthy during the pandemic, but taking this as an opportunity to focus on your physical, mental health, and making sure your environment is a healthy place for you. It's always a struggle. We got some time to focus. Anyways, it's late at night, so I want to bring you guys some stories. I was inspired by some friends reading various stories, poems, and performing songs for my best friend Angelito's birthday. And I realized that sharing stories is a favorite thing of mine. I've been to this cabin out in the Sierras a handful of times over the years. There's no electricity there. There's no internet. So we find ways to entertain ourselves. One of the more sober ways we entertain ourselves is by reading to each other, going around in a circle, reading paragraph to paragraph, kind of like back in elementary school. Or sometimes someone will be reading something out loud while other people cook or clean up or get the fire going. It's a little bit of a rustic situation, so you have to really put in some work. But having someone fill in your head with beautiful ideas, narratives, or playing music, which happens a lot at this space in the Sierras. This is really something I feel like it feels good for my mental health to step away from TV, radio. I know I'm coming to y'all through Facebook, but I hope you can hear my voice and hear the vibrations. I'm not asking for any donations for this, but if you guys want, you can always support my band, Calafia Armada. We've got music available for free and t-shirts and stuff. I'm sharing that right now. So if you want to help keep the arts that I'm interested in the Bay Area going, because we haven't had any shows, check out those releases. Just share it with people. We're ready to get back to the shows. Trust me, Calafia Armada is itching to be back on the stage and be back jamming with people. So to the stories. I picked a pretty straightforward selection. Hopefully I picked enough stuff just based on what I've been kind of interested in recently and what has come in front of my face. I've got some Jorge Luis Borges, the collected short stories. That's where I'm going to start. Oh, the places you go. Don't think you're better than this book just because you're an adult. You haven't arrived until you've read Dr. Seuss. The Secret Life of Plants, a great book. Some Shel Silverstein that's maybe a little bit difficult to see. And then my favorite for anyone who has been out to the Sierras with me, The Legend of the Yosemite Miwok. This book's very interesting. All right. So Borges is my favorite author, without a doubt. His short stories inspired me a lot. In fact, if you ever happen to read one of my short stories, you'll see how much I ripped off Borges. Oh, before I read, let me get a little bit of water here, because you gotta stay hydrated. This is Ocho, for anyone who knows. Cheers to everyone at home. I hope you all are relaxed. Oh, I want to say to my niece and nephew, Reese and Gwen, hey there, in Santa Monica. The first story I want to read to you guys is called The Widow Ching. This is about a pirate, written by Borges. The author, who uses the phrase female corsair, runs the risk of calling up an awkward image. That of the now faded Spanish operetta, with this series of obvious servant girls playing the part of choreographed pirates, on noticeably cardboard seas. And yet there have been many cases of female pirates, women skilled in the art of sailing, the governance of barbarous crews, the pursuit and looting of majestic ships on the high seas. One such woman was Mary Read, who was quoted once as saying that the profession of piracy wasn't for just anybody. And if you were going to practice it with dignity, you had to be a man of courage like herself. In the crude beginnings of her career, when she was not yet the captain of her own ship, a young man she fancied was insulted by the ship's bully. Mary herself picked a quarrel with the bully and fought him hand to hand, in the old way of the Isles of the Caribbean. The long, narrow, and undependable breech loader of her left hand, in her left hand, and trusty saber in her right. The pistol failed her, but the saber acquitted itself admirably. In 1720, the bold career of Mary Read was interrupted by a Spanish gallows in Santiago de la Vega on the island of Jamaica. Another female pirate of those waters was Anne Bonny, a magnificent Irish woman of high breasts and fiery hair who risked her life more than once in boarding ships. She stood on the deck with Mary Read, and then with her on the scaffold. Her lover, Captain John Rackham, met his own noose at the same hanging. Anne, contemptuous, emerged with that harsh variant of Aisha's rebuke of Boabdil. If you fought like a man, you needn't be hanged like a dog. Another woman pirate, but more a daring and long-lived one, plied the waters of far Asia, from the Yellow Sea to the rivers on the border of Annam. I am speaking of the doughty widow Ching. Years of apprenticeship. In 1797, the shareholders in the many pirate ships of the Yellow Sea formed a consortium, and they chose one Captain Ching, a just, though strict man, tested under fire. To be admiral in their new fleet, Ching was so harsh and exemplary in his sacking of the coasts that the terrified residents implored the emperor with gifts and tears to send them aid. Nor did their pitiable requests fall on deaf ears. They were ordered to set fire to their villages, abandon their fisheries, move inland, and learn the unknown science of agriculture. They did all this, and so, finding only deserted coastlines, the frustrated invaders were forced into waylaying ships, a depredation far more unwelcome than raids on the coast, for it seriously threatened trade. Once again, the imperial government responded decisively. It ordered the former fishermen to abandon their plows and oxen and return to their oars and nets. At this, the peasants, recalling their former terrors, balked, so the authorities determined upon another course. They would make Admiral Ching the master of the royal stables. Ching was willing to accept the buy-off. The stockholders, however, learned of the decision in the nick of time, and their righteous indignation took the form of a plate of rice served up with poisoned greens. The delicacy proved fatal. The soul of the former admiral and newly appointed master of the royal stables was delivered up to the deity of the seas. His widow was transfigured by the double treachery, called the pirates together and explained the complex case, exhorted them to spurn both the emperor's deceitful clemency and odious employment in the service of the shareholders with a bent for poison. She proposed what might be called freelance piracy. She also proposed that they cast votes for a new admiral, and she herself was elected. She was a sapling-thin woman of sleepy eyes and Carrie's riddled smile. Her oily black hair shone brighter than her eyes. Under Mrs. Ching's calm command, the ships launched forth into the danger and onto the high seas. The command. 13 years of methodical adventuring ensued. The fleet was composed of 6 squadrons, each under its own banner: red, yellow, green, black, purple, and one, the admiral's own, with the emblem of a serpent. The commanders of the squadrons had such names as Bird and Stone, Scourge of the Eastern Sea, Jewel of the whole crew, Wave of many fishes, and High Sun. The rules of the fleet, composed by the widow Ching herself, were unappealable and severe, and their measured, laconic style was devoid of those withered flowers and rhetoric that lend a ridiculous sort of majesty to the usual official pronouncements of the Chinese, an alarming example of which we shall encounter shortly. Here are some of the articles of the fleet's law. So, not the least thing shall be taken privately from the stolen and plundered goods. All shall be registered, and the pirate receive for himself out of 10 parts only 2. 8 parts belong to the storehouse, called the general fund. Taking anything out of this general fund without permission shall be death. If any man goes privately on shore, or what is called transgressing the bars, he shall be taken, and his ears perforated in the presence of the whole fleet. Repeating the same, he shall suffer death. No person shall debauch at his pleasure captive women, taken in villages or open spaces, and brought on board the ship. He must first request the ship's purser for permission, and then go aside in the ship's hold. To use violence against any woman without permission of the purser shall be punishable by death. Reports brought back by prisoners state that the mess on the pirate ships consists mainly of hardtack, fattened rice, and cooked rice. On days of combat, the crew would mix gunpowder with their liquor. Marked cards and loaded dice, drinking and fantan, the visions of the opium pipe and little lamp filled idle hours. 2 swords simultaneously employed were the weapon of choice. Before aborting, the pirate would sprinkle their cheeks and bodies with garlic water, a sure charm against injury by fire breathed from muzzles. The crew of a ship traveled with their women, the captain with his harem, which might consist of 5 or 6 women, and be renewed with each successive victory. The young Emperor Ching speaks. In June and July 1809, an imperial decree was issued, from which I translate the first paragraph and the last. Many people criticized its style. Miserable and injurious men, men who stamp upon bread, men who ignore the outcry of tax collectors and orphans, men whose small clothes bear the figure of the phoenix and the dragon, men who deny the truth of printed books, men who let their tears flow facing north. Such men disturb the happiness of our rivers and the erstwhile trustworthiness of our seas. Day and night their frail and crippled ships defy the tempest. Their object is not a benevolent one. They are not, and have never been, seaman's bosom friend. Far from lending aid, they fall upon him with ferocity, and make him an unwilling guest in ruin, mutilation, and even death. Thus these men violate the natural laws of the universe, and their offense make rivers overflow their banks and flood the plains. Sons turn against their father, the principles of wetness and dryness exchange places. Therefore I command thee to the punishment of these crimes. Admiral Kuo Lang, never forget, clemency is the emperor's to give. The emperor's subject would be presumptuous in granting it. Be cruel, be just, be obeyed, be victorious. The incidental reference to the crippled ships was, of course, a lie. Its purpose was to raise the courage of Kuo Lang's expedition. 90 days later, the forces of the widow Ching engaged the empires. Almost 1,000 ships did battle, from sunup to sundown. A mixed chorus of bells, drums, cannon bursts, curses, gongs, prophecies accompanied the action. The empire's fleet was destroyed. Admiral Kuo Lang found occasion to exercise neither the mercy forbidden him, nor the cruelty to which he was exhorted. He himself performed a ritual which our own defeated generals choose not to observe. He committed suicide. The terrified coastlines and riverbanks. Then the 600 junks of war and the haughty widow's 40,000 victorious pirates sailed into the mouth of Zhujiang River, sowing fire and appalling celebrations, and orphans left and right. Entire villages were razed. In one of them, the prisoners numbered more than 1,000. 120 women who fled the pathless refuge of the nearby stands and reeds or the rice paddies were betrayed by the crying of the baby and sold into slavery in Macau. Though distant, the pathetic tears and cries of the mourning and depredations came to the notice of Ching, the son of heaven. Certain historians have allowed themselves to believe that the news of the ravaging of his people caused the emperor less pain than did the defeat of his punitive expedition. Be that as it may, the emperor organized a second expedition, terrible in banners, sailors, soldiers, implements of war, provisions, soothsayers, and astrologers. This time the force was under the command of Admiral Ting Kwai Hu. The heavy swarm of ships sailed into the mouth of Zhujiang and cut off the pirate fleet. The widow rushed to prepare for battle. She knew it would be hard, very hard, almost desperate. Her men, after many nights and even months of pillaging and idleness, had grown soft. But the battle did not begin. The sun peacefully rose and without haste set again into the quivering reeds. The men in the arms watched and waited. Noontimes were more powerful than they, and the siestas were infinite. The dragon and the vixen. And yet each evening lazy flocks of weightless dragons rose high into the sky above the ships of the imperial fleet, and hovered delicately above the water, above the enemy decks. These comet-like kites were airy constructions of rice paper and reed, and each silvery and red body bore the identical characters. The widow anxiously studied that regular flight of meteors, and in it read the confused and slowly told fable of the dragon that had always watched over a vixen, in spite of the vixen's long ingratitude and constant crimes. The moon grew thin in the sky, and still the figures of rice paper and reed wrote the same story each evening, with almost imperceptible variation. The widow was troubled, and she brooded. When the moon grew fat in the sky, and in the red-tinged water, the story seemed to be reaching its end. No one could predict whether infinite pardon or infinite punishment was to be let fall upon the vixen. The widow understood. She threw her 2 swords into the river, knelt in the bottom of the boat, and ordered that she be taken to the flagship of the emperor's fleet. In the evening, the sky was filled with dragons, this time yellow ones. The widow murmured a single sentence. The vixen seeks the dragon's wing, and she stepped aboard the ship. The apotheosis. The chroniclers report that the vixen obtained her pardon and that she dedicated her slow old age to opium smuggling. She was no longer the widow. She assumed a name that might be translated the luster of true instruction. From this period, writes a historian, ships began to pass and repass in tranquility. All became quiet on the rivers and tranquil on the 4 seas. People lived in peace and plenty. Men sold their arms and bought oxen to plow their fields. They buried sacrifices and prayers on top of the hills, and rejoiced themselves by singing behind screens during the daytime. Borges, y'all. Some heavy stuff. A lot of things going on in that story, but I think we're all ready for the days when we can go back to dancing behind screens. Let me just clear my throat a little bit here. I hope everyone is enjoying. I hope I'm loud enough for y'all. Yeah, the kitty you saw, that's Zeke. He's an unwitting prop in my story time here. Quarantine story time. So let's get into it. Oh, the places you'll go. I'll show you guys the pictures too. Just remember they're flipped. Oh, the places you'll go. All right, let's just move on forward. Congratulations, today is your day. You're off to great places. You're off and away. You have brains in your head. You have feet in your shoes. You can steer yourself any direction you choose. You're on your own, and you know what you know. And you are the guy or gal or person who will decide where to go. You'll look up and down streets, look them over with care. About some you will say, I don't choose to go there. That's Reggaeton Street for my Cumbia Town friends. Cumbiatron friends. With your head full of brains and your shoes full of feet, you're too smart to go down any not-so-good street. And you may not find any you'll want to go down. In that case, of course, you'll head straight out of town. You can say no. That's just fine. It's opener there, in the wide open air. Out there, things can happen and frequently do, to people as brainy and footsy as you. And when things start to happen, don't worry, don't stew, just go right along. You'll start happening too. Oh yeah, just like my nails. Oh, the places you'll go. You'll be on your way up. You'll be seeing great sights. You'll join the high flyers who soar to high heights. You won't lag behind because you'll have the speed. You'll pass the whole gang and you'll soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. No innuendo. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch, and your gang will fly on. You'll be left in a lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and then chances are that you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not in for much fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done. We all got a lot of unslumping coming up, I think. You will come to a place where the streets are not marked. Some windows are lighted, but mostly they're dark. A place you could sprain both your elbow and chin. Do you dare stay out? Do you dare go in? How much can you lose? How much can you win? And if you go in, should you turn left or right? Or right and 3/4, or maybe not quite? Or go around back and sneak in from behind? Simple it's not, I'm afraid you'll find. For a mind maker upper to make up their mind. It's a hard job being a mind maker upper. You can get so confused and you'll start in a race down long wiggled roads at a breaknecking pace and grind on for miles across weirdish wild spaces. Headed, I fear, towards the most useless places. The waiting place. For people just waiting. They're just waiting. They're waiting for a train to go, or a bus to come, or a plane to go, or the mail to come, or the rain to go, or the phone to ring, or the snow to snow, waiting around for a yes or a no, or waiting for their hair to grow. Everyone is just waiting. Waiting for the fish to bite, waiting for the wind to fly a kite, or waiting around for Friday night. Woo! Waiting perhaps for their Uncle Jake, or a pot to boil, or a better break, or a string of pearls, or a pair of pants, or a wig with curls, or another dang chance. Everyone is just waiting. That's the waiting zone again. The waiting place. That's quarantine, isn't it? No, that's not for you. Somehow you'll escape. All that waiting and staying, you'll find the bright places where boom bands are playing. Playing boombia. Dang, I want to hear a boom band. With banner flipping once more you'll ride high, ready for anything under the sky. Ready because you're that kind of person. It's guy, but person's better. Oh, the places you'll go. There is fun to be done. There are points to be scored. There are games to be won. And the magical things you can do with that ball will make you the winnest winner of all. Fame! You'll be famous as famous can be, with the whole wide world watching you win on TV. Ooh. Except when they don't, because sometimes they won't. I'm afraid that sometimes you'll play lonely games too. Games you can't win because you'll play against you. Ain't that real? All alone, whether you like it or not. Alone will be something. You'll be quite a lot. And when you're alone, there's a very good chance you'll meet things that scare you right out of your pants. There are some down the road between hither and yon that can scare you so much that you won't want to go on. But on you will go, though the weather will be foul. On you will go, though your enemies will prowl. On you will go, through the hacking cracks howl. Onward up many a frightening creek, though your arms may get sore, and your sneakers may leak. On and on you will hike, and I know you'll hike far, and face up your problems, whatever they are. You'll get mixed up, of course, and as you already know, you'll get mixed up with many strange birds as you go. So be sure when you step with care and great tact, and remember that life is a great balancing act. Just never forget to be dexterous and deft, and never mix up your right foot with your left. Right foot with your left. All right, I'm off to a good start. And will you succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98 3/4% guaranteed. It's pretty good. Kid, you'll move mountains. So be your name Baxbaum or Bixby or Bray or Mordecai Ali Van Allen O'Shea. You're off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way. And wear a mask while you do. Oh, the places you'll go. I actually haven't read this in a long time. Not before I selected this. Thank you everyone for joining. I figured everyone is sitting at home bored with nothing to do. I don't mind embarrassing myself. So I want to read to you some of my favorite stories. I'm going to have another sip here. I'm joined by Giggles from Katie and this very, very relaxed cat named Zeke. Let's see if he'll sit in my lap. Oh, yeah. You're right, it's getting a bit chilly. Let's all pull up the blanket, everybody. It's getting a little bit cold here. Let's see. See if we can get Zeke to warm up my lap while I read you guys another story here. This one here is called The Secret Life of Plants. This is a long book. It goes into some research, some more credible than others, about whether plants actually have consciousness and how that consciousness has been measured and seen. I think most of the people tuning into this understand that plants have a consciousness and that they are pretty active members of the community on this planet. So none of this is going to be too surprising, but this is the first time this was all put together in a book. I think this was in 73 or sometime around then. So this is just the introduction. Short of Aphrodite, there is nothing lovelier on this planet than a flower, nor more essential than a plant. The true matrix of human life is the greensward covering Mother Earth. Without green plants, we would neither breathe nor eat. On the undersurface of every leaf, a million movable lips are engaged in devouring carbon dioxide and expelling oxygen. Altogether, 25 million square miles of leaf surface are daily engaged in this miracle of photosynthesis, producing oxygen and food for man and beast. Of the 375 billion tons of food we consume each year, the bulk comes from plants, which synthesize it out of the air and soil with the help of sunlight. The remainder comes from animal products, which in turn are derived from plants. All the food, drink, intoxicants, drugs, and medicines that keep man alive, if properly used, radiantly healthy, are ours through the sweetness of photosynthesis. Sugar produces all our starches, fats, oils, waxes, cellulose. From crib to coffin, man relies on cellulose as the basis for his shelter, clothing, fuel, fibers, basketry, cordage, musical instruments, and the paper on which he scribbles his philosophy. The abundance of plants profitably used by man is indicated by nearly 600 pages of Uphoff's Dictionary of Economic Plants. Agriculture, as the economists agree, is the basis for a nation's wealth. Instinctively aware of the aesthetic vibrations of plants, which are spiritually satisfying, human beings are happiest and most comfortable when living with flora. At birth, marriage, death, blossoms are prerequisite, as they are at mealtime and festivities. We give plants and flowers as tokens of love, of friendship, or homage, and of thanks for hospitality. Our houses are adorned with gardens. Our cities with parks, our nations with national preserves, especially here in California. The first thing a woman does is make a room livable. To make a room livable is to place a plant in it or a vase of fresh cut flowers. Interesting. That's what I do also. Most men, if pressed, might describe paradise, whether in heaven or on earth, as a garden filled with luxuriant orchids. Well, I'm just going to move on, keep this family friendly. Aristotle's dogma that plants have souls but no sensation lasted through the Middle Ages and into the 18th century, when Carl von Linné, grandfather of modern botany, declared that plants differ from animals and humans only in their lack of movement, a conceit which was shot down by the great 19th century botanist Charles Darwin, who proved that every tendril has its power of independent movement. As Darwin put it, plants acquire and display this power only when it is of some advantage to them. At the beginning of the 20th century, a gifted Viennese biologist with the Gallic name Raoul Francais put forth the idea, shocking to contemporary natural philosophers, that plants move their bodies as freely, easily, and gracefully as the most skilled animal or human, and that the only reason we don't appreciate the fact is that plants do so at a much slower pace than humans. The roots of plants, said Francais, burrow inquiringly into the earth. Their buds and twigs swing in definite circles. The leaves and blossoms bend and shiver with change. The tendrils circle questioningly and reach out with ghostly arms to feel their surroundings. Man, said Francais, merely thinks plants motionless and feelingless because he has not taken the time to watch them. Poets and philosophers such as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and Rudolf Steiner, who took the trouble to watch plants, discovered that they grow in opposite directions, partly burrowing into the ground as if attracted by gravity, partly shooting up into the air as if pulled by some form of anti-gravity or levity. Worm-like rootlets, which Darwin likened to the brain, burrow constantly downward, with thin white threads, crowding themselves firmly into the soil, tasting it as they go. Small hollow chambers in which a ball of starch can rattle indicate that the root tips the direction of the pull of gravity. When the earth is dry, roots turn towards moister ground, finding their way into buried pipes, stretching, as in the case of the lowly alfalfa plant, as far as 40 feet, developing an energy that can bore through concrete. No one has yet counted the roots of a tree, but a study of a single rye plant indicates a total of over 13 million rootlets, with a combined length of 380 miles. Of these rootlets of the rye plant are fine root hairs, estimated to number some 14 billion, with a total length of 6,600 miles, almost a distance from pole to pole. It's one rye plant. As the special burrowing cells are worn out by contact with stones, pebbles, and large grains of sand, they are rapidly replaced. And when they reach a source of nourishment, they die and are replaced by cells designed to dissolve mineral salts and collect the resulting elements. This basic nourishment is passed from cell to cell through the plant, which constitutes a single unit of protoplasm, a watery or gelatinous substance considered the basis of physical life. The root is thus a water pump, the water acting as a universal solvent, raising elements from root to leaf, evaporating and falling back to earth, to act once more as the medium of this chain of life. The leaves of an ordinary sunflower will transpire in a day as much water as a man perspires. Wow. On a hot day, a single birch can absorb as much as 400 quarts, exuding cooling moisture through its leaves. No plant, says Francais, is without movement. All growth is a series of movements. Plants are constantly preoccupied with bending, turning, and quivering. He describes a summer day with thousands of polyp-like arms stretched from a peaceful arbor, trembling, quivering in their eagerness for new support for the heavy stalk that grows behind them. When the tendril, which sweeps a full circle in 67 minutes, finds a perch, within 20 seconds it starts to curve around the object, and within an hour it has wound itself so firmly it is hard to tear away. The tendril then curls itself like a corkscrew, and in so doing raises the vine itself. A climbing plant which needs a prop will creep towards the nearest support. Should this be shifted, the vine, within a few hours, will change its course into the new direction. Can the plant see the pole? Does it sense it in some unfathomable way? If a plant is growing between obstructions and cannot see a potential support, it will unerringly grow towards a hidden support, avoiding the area where none exists. Plants, say Francais, are capable of intent. They can stretch towards and seek out what they want in ways as mysterious as the most fantastic creations of romance. Far from existing inertly, the inhabitants of the pasture, or what the ancient Hellenes called the botane, appear to be able to perceive and to react to what is happening in their environment at a level of sophistication far surpassing that of humans. The sundew plant will grasp at a fly with infallible accuracy, moving in just the right direction towards where the prey is to be found. Some parasitical plants can recognize the slightest trace of odor of their victim and will overcome all obstacles to crawl in its direction. Plants seem to know which ants will steal their nectar, closing when the ants are about, opening only when there is enough dew on the stems to keep the ants from climbing. The more sophisticated acacia actually enlists the protective services of certain ants, which it rewards with nectar in return for the ants' protection against other insects and herbivorous animals. Is it chance that plants grow in special shapes to adapt to the idiosyncrasies of insects that will pollinate them, luring these insects with special color and fragrance, rewarding them with their favorite nectar, devising extraordinary canals and floral machinery with which to ensnare a bee so as to release it through the trap door only when the pollination process is complete? It is really nothing but a reflex, or is it really nothing but a reflex or coincidence that a plant, such as the orchid, Trichoceros parviflorus, will grow its petals to imitate the female of a species of fly, so exactly that the male attempts to mate with it, and in doing so pollinates the orchid? Is it pure chance that night-blossoming flowers grow white, the better to attract night moths and night-flying butterflies, emitting a stronger fragrance at dusk, or that carrion lily develops the smell of rotting meat in areas where only flies abound, whereas flowers which rely on the wind to cross-pollinate the species do not waste energy on making themselves beautiful, fragrant, or appealing to insects, but remain relatively unattractive. To protect themselves, plants develop thorns, a bitter taste, or gummy secretions that catch and kill unfriendly insects. The timorous Mimosa pudica, otherwise known as the sensitive plant, has a mechanism which reacts whenever a beetle or an ant worm crawls up its stem towards its delicate leaves. As the intruder touches a spur on the stem, it raises, the leaves fold up, and the assailant is either rolled off the branch by the unexpected movement or is obliged to draw back in fright. Some plants, unable to find nitrogen in swampy land, obtain it by devouring live creatures. There are more than 500 varieties of carnivorous plants, eating any kind of meat from insect to beef, using endlessly cunning methods to capture their prey, from tentacles to sticky hairs to funnel-like traps. The tentacles of carnivorous plants are not only mouths, but stomachs raised on poles, which seize and eat their prey and digest the meat and blood, leaving nothing but the skeleton. Insect-devouring sundews, which are native to California, pay no attention to pebbles, bits of metal, or other foreign substances placed on their leaves, but are quick to sense the nourishment to be derived from a piece of meat. Darwin found that the sundew can be excited with when a piece of thread is laid on it, weighing no more than 1/78,000th of a gram. A tendril which next to the rootlets constitutes the most sensitive portion of the plant, will bend if a piece of silk thread is laid across it, weighing, a very small amount. The ingenuity of plants in devising forms of construction far exceeds that of human engineers. Man-made structures cannot match the supply strength or of the long hollow tubes that support fantastic weights against terrific storms. A plant's use of fibers wrapped in spirals is a mechanism of great resistance against tearing, not yet developed by human ingenuity. Cells elongate into sausages or flat ribbons, locked one onto the other to form unbreakable cords. As a tree grows upwards, it scientifically thickens to support the greater weight. The Australian eucalyptus, also common here in California, but not native, can raise its head on a slim trunk above the ground 480 feet, or as high as the Great Pyramid of Cheops. And certain walnuts can hold a harvest of 100,000 nuts. The Virginia knotweed can tie a sailor's knot, which is put to such a strain that when it dries, that it snaps, hurling the seeds to germinate as far as possible from the mother. Plants are even sentient to orientation and to the future. Frontiersmen and hunters in the prairie of Mississippi Valley discovered a sunflower plant, Silphium laciniatum, whose leaves accurately indicate the points of a compass. Indian licorice, or Arborus cricatorius, is so keenly sensitive to all forms of electrical and magnetic influence, it is used as a weather plant. Botanists who first experimented with it in London's Kew Gardens found in it a means for predicting cyclones, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. So accurate are alpine flowers about the seasons, they know when spring is coming and bore their way through the lingering snowbanks, developing their own heat with which to melt the snow. Plants which react so certainly, so variously, and so promptly to the outer world must, says Francais, have some means of communicating with the outer world, something comparable to or superior to our senses. Francais insists that plants are constantly observing and recording events and phenomena of which man, trapped in his anthropocentric view of the world, subjectively revealed to him only through his five senses, knows nothing. Whereas plants have been almost universally looked upon as senseless automata, they now have been found to be able to distinguish between sounds inaudible to the human ear and color wavelengths such as infrared and ultraviolet, invisible to the human eye. They are especially sensitive to X-rays and to the high frequency of television, possibly 5G. The whole vegetal world, says Francais, lives responsive to the movement of the Earth and its satellite moon, to the movement of other planets in our solar system, and one day will be shown to be affected by the stars and other cosmic bodies of the universe. As the external form of a plant is kept a unit, restored whenever part of it is destroyed, Francais assumes there must be some conscious entity supervising the entire form, some intelligence directing the plant, either from within or from without. Over half a century ago, Francais, who believed plants to be possessed of all the attributes of living creatures, including the most violent reactions against abuse and most ardent gratitude for favors, could have written A Secret Life of Plants, That's the name of the book. But when he had already put into print, but what he had already put into print either ignored by the establishment or was considered to be too shocking. What shocked them most was his suggestion that the awareness of plants might originate in a supra-material world of cosmic beings, to which, long before the birth of Christ, the Hindu sages referred as devas, in which as fairies, elves, gnomes, sylphs, and a host of other creatures were a matter of direct vision and experience to clairvoyance among the Celts and other sensitives. The idea was considered by vegetal scientists to be charmingly jejune, and as it was hopelessly romantic. It has taken the startling discoveries of several scientific minds in the 1960s to bring the plant world sharply back to the attention of mankind. Even so, there are skeptics who find it hard to believe that plants may at last be the bridesmaids at a marriage of physics and metaphysics. Evidence now supports the vision of the poet and the philosopher that plants are living, breathing, communicating creatures, endowed with personality and with the attributes of soul. It is only we, in our blindness, who have insisted on considering them automata. Most extraordinary, it now appears that plants may be ready, willing, and able to cooperate with humanity in the Herculean job of turning this planet back into a garden, from the squalor and corruption of what William Cobbett would have called a wen. I'm not sure what a wen is, but that's the introduction to the secret life of books, or plants. It's a book. You can see it. This book was written 50 years ago, and we still have trouble understanding that these plants have lives just like everyone else. Just like rocks. A lot of people have said that in the past, and this book actually has some scientific data which shows some of the consciousness of plants. For anyone who's still skeptical. Well, let's move right along. That one was a little bit heavy. We're talking about all these lives around us sprouting up. It's spring. If you haven't had a chance to hike, please do so safely. We're very lucky, at least in the Bay Area, to have a lot of parks open and streets that are available for people to safely walk along and protect your mental health and enjoy nature. This is a good time to be connecting with nature. I noticed more birds are coming around. I saw a coyote in the daytime recently with my mom, and that was really amazing. Rarely seen. So nature has really been taking advantage of the quarantine times to make its presence known. So I have one that I plan to read, and then maybe a couple. We'll just find a couple in here. If y'all, I see the group chat here. If anyone has any Shel Silverstein from requests from A Light in the Attic by Shel Silverstein, I can read those. But I want to read A Strange Wind. What a strange wind it was today, whistling and whirling and skirling away, like a worried old woman with so much to say. What a strange wind it was today. What a strange wind it was today, cool and clear from a sky so gray. And my hat stayed on, but my head blew away. What a strange wind it was today. I hate when that happens. Oh, here's one for anyone who's watching this with their kids. This one's called Crowded Tub. There's too many kids in this tub. There's too many elbows to scrub. I just washed a behind that I'm sure wasn't mine. There's too many kids in this tub. Oh, here's one for everyone bored at home. Channels. Channel 1's no fun. Channel 2's just news. Channel 3's hard to see. Channel 4 is just a bore. Channel 5 is all jive. Channel 6 needs to be fixed. Channel 7 and Channel 8, just old movies, not so great. Channel 9's a waste of time. Channel 10 is off, my child. Wouldn't you like to talk a while? The quarantine channel is still on over here. Quarantine story time. All right. I see my aunt is requesting some some of these. Let's see if I can find one of these here. Sometimes when the radio is boring and I can't find any podcasts and my partner is driving, I just read some things aloud to her. Well, so I don't get car sickness, so I can do that. Whether she pays attention or not, it's fun for me. I hope y'all can tell that I'm having a great time here. I'm dressed in my birthday suit. What's up? Rain's in the front. Oh, I couldn't find it. Hammock, rain, the sitter. Oh, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to read some of these other ones in the meantime. We'll come back to it. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. This is for everyone who's doing a lot of cooking at home. How to not have to dry the dishes. If you have to dry the dishes, such an awful boring chore. If you have to dry the dishes instead of going to the store. If you have to dry the dishes and you drop one on the floor, well, maybe they won't let you dry the dishes anymore. Let's see, we got rain, or what was the other request we got here? My house. Who else grew up with Shel Silverstein besides me? Oh, I'm being told that's from another book. All right, let's read another one. This one's for me right now because I am wearing a wool sweater, and the weather actually has turned recently, so it's quite warm. This one is called "It's Hot." It's hot. I can't get cool. I've drunk a quart of lemonade. I think I'll take my shoes off and sit around in the shade. It's hot. My back is sticky. The sweat rolls down my chin. I think I'll take my clothes off and sit around in my skin. It's hot. I've tried with electric fans, in pools, and ice cream cones. I think I'll take my skin off and just sit around in my bones. Still hot. Shel Silverstein. All right. I think maybe one more and then we'll move on. Here's Buckin Bronco. Can you ride the Buckin Bronco? Can you stay in that old saddle till your teeth begin to rattle? Can you whoop and bounce and stick on his back? Can you ride the Buckin Bronco while he's snorting smoke and kicking? Can your stomach start when your stomach starts to sicken and you feel as though your spine is about to crack? I can ride the Buckin Bronco. I'll just sit up there and whistle till his strength begins to fizzle, and he knows that I am his master finally. Yes, I'll tame the Bucking Bronco. You can see me setting easy. Here's the Bucking Bronco. That one goes with the illustration. If you're just listening, I got bucked from the Bronco. Story is all this time. All right. We're coming up on the... I think I'm going to round this out. My selection is getting a little bit out there, but I do want to read one more story from Legends of the Yosemite Miwok. This book is sold in Miwok Valley. I think the proceeds of it go to support some of the tribes that are still fighting for having a say over the land and even being able to move back to Yosemite and live in Yosemite. The stories may be stories that come from generally the Sierra area. I think the Yokut, the Miwok, and the Paiutes all have some similar stories. I think the history of the book, this book is kind of interesting. But the stories themselves were translated a long time ago, and some of them are very relevant today. So I want to close out tonight by reading a book that anyone who has visited the cabin with me knows I insist on reading. It's called The Legend of Tisik, or Tisiak. Oh wait, no, this is not the one. Oh my. Oh, here I go. No, the one I want to talk about is Tisik the Skunk. That was the wrong story, y'all. There we go. The Greed of Tisik the Skunk. This one is especially important for adults. I think children. It's a good message for children, but really this is an important one for adults, especially with the current political situation. It turns out the Miwok had a solution a long time ago. So listen in, Facebook land. The Greed of Tisik the Skunk. Tisik the Skunk and his wife had a daughter who, when she grew up, married Uel the Gray Fox. Gray Fox was a good hunter, and he and Skunk, who was chief, often hunted together. Not far from the Skunk's home were two high hills standing side by side. In the narrow gap between them ran the trail of Sokoi the elk. One day, Skunk told Gray Fox to hide in this narrow place while he went down to the plain to drive up the elk. So Gray Fox hid there, and Skunk went down near the elk and fired his terrible scent. The elk could not stand the smell and ran up the trail. Gray Fox waited until the leader and all the others had passed between the hills, and when the last one had gone by, he stepped behind them and fired his arrow, with such force that it shot through the whole band of elk, killing them all. When Skunk arrived at the scene, he was so glad that he danced. He called all the people to come and help carry the meat home. Then he said to Gray Fox, "You must pack one elk, and you must pack me too, for I'm too tired to walk." All that dancing. Gray Fox was afraid of Skunk, so he did what he was told. He lifted a big elk on his shoulders, and Skunk climbed on top. Skunk, who said he was tired before, danced on the body of the elk all the way back to the village. When Skunk told the people to skin the elk and promised them some of the meat, then he promised them some of the meat. They skinned the elk, cut the meat into strips, and hung it up to dry. When they had done this, they asked him for their share. "Can I have my $1,200? Skunk refused to give them any, but told them they might eat acorn mush and peanut. And then he turned as if he was going to shoot his scent. Everyone was afraid. Skunk was so greedy that he would not give any of the meat to anyone, not even his own wife or daughter, nor his son-in-law, Gray Fox, who killed it. He put it all away to dry for himself. The next day he told Gray Fox to hunt again. And they did the same as before. When the elk were in the narrow pass between the hills, Gray Fox shot his arrow and killed them all, as before. Then Skunk called the people to come home and carry the elk, home, and made Gray Fox carry one, and he danced on top all the way home, just as before. Again, he told the people to skin the elk, and I'll give you some meat for supper. But when they had the elk skinned, they cut up the meat. He told them to eat acorns and peanut, just pine nuts. At the same time, turning to frighten them with his scent, Skunk took all the meat to dry for himself, just as he had done before. Says I'm black. The people were very angry, but were afraid to do anything for fear Skunk would shoot his scent and kill them. They talked the matter over for a long time, and finally a wise man said, "What are we going to do? Must we hunt for him and pack his meat and skin it for him always and not get any? We'd better kill him. But how can we do it so that he will not shoot his scent and kill us?" Then Two-Week the badger spoke. He said, "We can kill him." And while Skunk was watching his meat so that no one would take any of it, Badger dug a big hole and built a fire in it. Someone asked him why he had made a fire, and Badger replied, "Do you not know that Skunk is a great dancer and loves to dance? We will have the fire in the hole and cover the top with sticks and leaves and earth so that he can't see anything. Then we will send for him to come and dance. And when he dances, he will break through and fall in, and we shall kill him." The people answered, "All right." That's what it says. When it was dark, they sent a messenger to Skunk. He said, "You are a great dancer. We want to dance tonight, and we will pay you well if you will come." The Skunk was pleased and answered, "All right, where shall I dance?" They took him to the place and pointing to it said, "Right there." Skunk began to dance and sing. Everyone said, "Good, you're doing well. Keep on. You're doing finely. Go ahead. You surely are a great dancer." And they flattered him, and he kept on dancing. He danced harder and harder. He loved the flattery, like someone we know who's in power. And he was proud, and he wanted to show what he could do. After a while, when Skunk was dancing hardest, the sticks broke, and he fell into the hole. The people were ready. They had a very big rock, which it had taken many people to bring, but which was not mentioned earlier in the story. They were waiting, and the moment Skunk fell in, they pushed the rock quickly over the hole and held it down. They all climbed up on it and held it down tight so Skunk could not get out. The hot coals burnt Skunk's feet and made him dance. He was very angry, and he shot his scent so hard against the side of the hole that he pushed mountains up on that side. Then he turned the other way and shot again and pushed mountains up on that side too. After this, his scent was gone, and the coals burnt him and killed him. Then all the people were happy. The next day, the people had a great feast and ate all the dried elk meat they wanted. Well, that story, He Seek the Skunk, has got to be one of my favorite stories ever. The lesson is, you don't got to take being oppressed, but I'm sure y'all picked that up. This has been Quarantine Storytime with Mikhail. Again, I am just here to wish everyone good health, good mental health this evening, send you off to bed with some good thoughts. No donations, but please check out my band, Calafia Armada. We'll be back one day doing live music for you guys. Go download our music for free. There's a link for you guys. I'm hoping to do something like this maybe tomorrow or later on this week. Feel free to message me your suggestions. I'm open to reading stuff that y'all suggest. I'm trying to read from what I have in my library, but I have some stuff on the computer that I could share also. So I hope you all enjoyed this. Sleep well and be healthy.